You're listening to Accupolitics, a Harry Potter reread podcast that focuses on politics in the wizarding world. As always, I'm Adri, one of your hosts, and a recovering English major.
And I'm Helene, your co-host and very tired producer.
My eye is twitching from how tired we both are.
Yeah. I've had a little eye twitch the last week or so, but probably nothing to the level of you with your baby-driven, sleep-deprived state.
I mean, it's not a competition, as I've told you before. We are both tired, and that's all that matters.
Yes, I can still acknowledge that having a baby must be much more difficult than any lack of sleep that I am that I am experiencing in this point of my life.
Yeah, no, I mean, not to be a bad mom, but I've had moments of thinking, how bad is Benadryl really to give to a baby? I have not done it. But I'm just
don't be calling her in for child neglect or abuse or whatever. She hasn't
No. Okay,
it's just a thought.
It's just a thought. It's just a thought, a thought that has fueled many deep shame spiral. But it's been okay. So for Helene knows this, but I don't think we've talked about it on the show. Helene, I am now trying to balance motherhood and working from homehood, and personhood is something that I don't have time for anymore. So whatever. And it's hard, obviously, because my job is a lot of writing, and to write you have to have a lot of reading and writings, right? So to read a lot you have to have quiet because you need to process the info. It's not just reading for pleasure's sake, right? And then to write a lot you have to have also quiet and concentration, which I don't know about you guys, but I feel with a 6-month-old 7-month-old baby you don't get a lot of that quiet and concentration time. So what has been working for me and my husband, also complicating this, is that one, childcare is very expensive, and two, it is not our pediatrician does not recommend that we send her to daycare if we can make that happen before 1 year old, because their immune systems are not in great shape before then. So there's a lot of things going into this decision we made. So because I have a kind of a flexible schedule in the terms of as long as I get my work done, it doesn't matter when I get my work done. I've been working nights and then kind of sleeping during the day when the baby sleeps and when Seth gets home. So, but Seth doesn't get home until 6 o'clock some nights, or 5:30 at the earliest. So I am working nights, going to bed at 6 a.m., waking up at 8 a.m., spending the day with the baby, being very tired after working the full night, and then falling back to sleep whenever Seth comes home. So it's I'm getting naps during the day, but not a consistent block of sleep. So I'm just sometimes at in my delirium at 2 p.m., I'm what can I do to get you to sleep?
I'm sure that other parents can relate to all that you were saying. So,
but she is the cutest, and she has started blowing raspberries consistently.
Aww.
I am covered in spit all the time, which is it's adorable and also very disgusting. She's starting shrieking a lot, to hear the sound of her voice, and sometimes it sounds like she is actually singing. So one of my friends said, it seems like when she starts talking, she's not gonna stop. And I said, that tracks. And two, maybe we'll get another podcast host.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever need a day off, I know who to call.
Just speed dial Livy. She's like a. Is there a bat signal for like podcasting? I don't know. Is there like a microphone in the sky?
Yeah, I think that we could try that out when she has an idea of what a podcast mic is. Something we could
Yeah.
test.
Okay. Anyway, that's my sleep sleeplessness fueled rant. How are you, Helene, other than tired?
I am, just trying to get through, some just the next couple weeks. I'm an adult. I'm just trying to survive.
How's your Halloween?
It was good. Had a little gathering with some friends on the Saturday of Halloween weekend. Little potluck, lots of nice little Halloween themed snacks, and then there was like pumpkin carving, and of course they had Harry Potter on in the background for the ambiance. People wore
Yeah,
costumes. It
yeah.
was great. So yeah, it was just like a really nice festive, like fall Halloween time. I enjoyed it, but that was about the maximum of what I did in terms of Halloween plans. Did you do anything fun for Halloween?
I mean, I made Livy a witch outfit. Like that
I
was,
saw that was very cute.
it was
That's what I
giving
would
like
do.
McGonagall. You
Yeah,
know, I
yeah.
feel I had bought like a bunch of like a yard of felt, black felt, which is excessive.
Wait, so
Obviously,
you
like the big
made
hat
her
is not
hat?
that big.
You
Yes, I
made.
made her a hat.
Oh, that's cute. I thought maybe you just bought it. That's cool.
Yeah, I made her hat and I made her tutu.
Oh my gosh, she's so spoiled.
And her onesie is from Target. Oh yeah, no. So I didn't have a pattern. I was like, how hard can this be? Which is always a good sign that I'm in for trouble. Like,
Yeah.
whenever I think in my head,
Famous
how hard
last
can something be?
words. Famous last
Yeah.
words.
And I know better by now, but does that stop me? I measured her head. I did geometry for the first time in like 10 years. Because I was like, okay, so if I measure her head, that is like the circumference of whatever I need to cut out, but that doesn't give me the area. And if I need to cut it and like, so like I did like geometry to get like the whole thing. Anyway, so I did that. So, because I needed the radius to like, because I folded it in four to make the circle. Anyway,
If you want
that's
me to
beside the
stay
point.
awake, this line of conversation is not,
Conversation
yeah, is
is
not the
not
way.
is not doing it for you. Okay. Anyway, that aside, whenever I finished the hat, I was like, "Oh, this kind of looks like a witch's hat, right?" Um, it barely fit her head, and
Oh,
I was like, "Oh, I probably should have made it bigger, not just to her measurements." So that's a learning experience for me that you have to like
hey,
make the hat bigger than the head because
at
I'm dumb.
least she's in a stage of life where her head is the most malleable that it will ever be. So
This is not, Helene, this is not great. Like, I'm not going to stuff my baby's head into a hat. Like, what
if
if
not
she,
now, when?
if not now, when? What if she ends up having like a cone head, like type head? No, we can't do that. The most malleable it'll ever be. Oh my God, Helene.
It's true. It's just biology, science.
Okay. So she's a little witch, but now okay, so now I'm gonna say it, and then it's gonna ruin the surprise basically for next year, but we've already planned what we're gonna do next year. So she's gonna be Princess Peach on Mario Kart. And so I found this like stroller car thing where we can like push her, and it's like pink, and it's like a lot of money, but I'm gonna spend it because like I'm gonna do it for the gram,
Oh my
and
god.
for posterity. So it's like a little stroller that is also a little car, pink car, and then I'm gonna get her like little Princess Peach outfit, and then Seth and I are probably going to go as like banana peels behind her.
Oh my gosh. That's adorable.
It is so extra, and I'm here for it because obviously she is the star of the show.
Well, let's talk about Harry Potter. What are we talking about this chapter, Adri?
Oh, I mean, this episode we are talking about chapter 16, Sweet 16 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And it's called Godric's Hollow. A lot of Hallows and Hollows in this one.
Yes, that is a good point. So, in case, young listener, you have forgotten what happened in this chapter because maybe you're like me and it's been years since you've reread this book. This is the one where Harry and Hermione deal with the aftermath of Ron's departure and try to get back on track to complete their mission. They decide to finally visit Godric's Hollow, both with different reasons for wanting to do so, and when they arrive, they search the graveyard until they find James and Lily's final resting place. It's not a very
This
action-packed
was,
chapter, but I enjoyed it.
yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, oh, this is all that happens in this chapter? I for sure thought we're gonna go into like the Nagini of it all, Nagini of it
Yeah.
all, you know?
Yeah, that we get to do that next chapter. But yeah, this one was kind of just like I liked it because it was kind of a window into like their emotions, which I like I don't feel like we always need to be moving the plot along. Like this is a chapter where we get to kind of like feel for the characters for a little bit, which I like that.
Well, maybe this is a chapter where we deal with like the internal action of the plot more than like the external plot,
Yeah.
like Harry grapples with some things and there's some growth and movement in that area, but not necessarily in the outside world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that assessment.
Speaking of which, when you read about those feelings, what was your politic?
Yeah, so my politic is sorrow, but it also is going to be vulnerability because I feel like they go hand in hand, especially in
Okay.
this chapter. So sorrow is a feeling of deep distress caused by loss, disappointment, and other misfortune suffered by oneself or others. And so obviously we see the first half of the chapter we see Ron and or not Ron. We don't see Ron. That's the whole point. Uh, we see Harry and Hermione dealing with the sorrow that comes along a lot, as well as grief and disappointment when Ron left them, and kind of how their sorrow is affecting them, their daily life, their decisions. For example, they chose to, take longer to leave the current place that they were at and stick around for about an hour just in case Ron might come back because they were so distraught over him leaving. Um, and as soon as Harry also realizes that they've decided that they are for sure officially going to Godric's Hollow, he uses that as kind of like a window of an opportunity to think more and more about his parents and the life that they had there and what could have been if Voldemort didn't attack them that night when he was a child. And it's just kind of like that little tiny like opening for the sorrow to start really, really just getting in there and affecting him. And then at the end of the chapter, we see how that affects him in full effect, basically, when he's confronted with his parents' graves, just all the way up to finding the grave. And then the anticipation of like every single grave he walked past, he would just be like, get this feeling of not anxiety, but just like anticipation of, is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one? And then the overflowing of deep, deep sorrowful emotion that he's overcome with when they find the grave. And that comes along with an outpouring of emotion that we don't typically see from him. And that's where kind of vulnerability comes in as well. So like when in this chapter, specifically when Harry and Hermione are feeling this sorrow, they are allowing each other, they're allowing themselves to be vulnerable in front of each other. Because sorrow is usually a very intimate emotion. It's kind of one that you
Mm-hmm.
tend to deal with on your own because it's very rare to have another person who knows exactly how you feel or is going through the same thing. Like for Harry, um, him losing his parents, that's like a unique thing in this group of friends. Hermione doesn't know the emotions that he's feeling because she's never lost her parents, but his ability to completely succumb to that overflowing of emotion when he lets that sorrow kind of control his actions at the end of the chapter, um, the fact that he trusts Hermione enough to do that in front of her and be vulnerable with her, uh, it's just really it says something about their relationship
Mm-hmm.
that they have. And same with at the beginning with Hermione, the way that Hermione is grieving the loss of Ron from the group, the way that it is affecting her emotions and her actions and her just daily, just everything that she does. Um, and Harry being witness to that, not judging her, letting her have her space, and then also
Mm-hmm.
grieving in his own way at the same time. It's just very touching to me.
Yeah, you're right. They're both like showing vulnerability. And it's very unspoken between both of them,
Yeah.
which I like. Kind of like he lets her have the space and she lets him have the space to handle it all. Specifically, like the ways in which they both kind of mourn, not mourn, that's my politic, but like kind of also, mourn the loss of like Ron in their, not that he's dead, much like, not that Helene would really cry over that much, but um you know m- mourn his physical loss to the journey.
Yeah, like
Let's
mourn the
just say,
loss of his presence, his support, his his being
yeah,
there.
like, yeah, being there, and the way that they like try to lengthen the amount of time that they're in the last place that they were in, and like how it's like, oh, we gotta move because then it's not safe for us, even though we really want him to come back, that kind of stuff. So I thought it's pretty good. Moments that showcase that. Like my politic, like I said earlier, is mourning. And I was thinking about that in terms of like mourning as in like politics of mourning as invoking the deaths of everyday citizens to call for political change. And for this to happen, a loss must be visible and provoke discussions about responsibility. Mourning gauges political standing and belonging. It is also a movement when these categories can be transformed. So in the United States, obviously, like the death of activists and everyday citizens have sparked political change.
Yeah.
We've seen this happen, even spark political movements.
Yeah.
It's sad that we don't see the progress we want to see at this point. But in this chapter, I was also thinking about the politics of mourning and the way that Harry needed to see where his parents lay in order to find a way to propel himself forward in this journey.
Yeah.
Right? Like he can't quite justify it out loud as to why he wants to go there, but it's almost like I need to know that I'm doing this for a reason, and I need to know where my parents lay in order for me to continue this mission that seems so desperate and hopeless at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And mourning that in that political way is where I see that in this chapter. In a more mundane way, like we talked about, the whole run of it all.
Yeah.
And also in the whole like Harry being like, well, Dumbledore never told me that his family was here too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that obviously I think yours and mine go pretty hand in hand.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like obviously using vulnerability as like a political tool would be something like vulnerability requires trust, right? And it garners trust. It helps like create trust. So if someone is vulnerable with you, you feel more inclined to trust
Mm-hmm.
them. And so it is sometimes a tactic that um, that political leaders might use in an effort to gain the trust of their constituents to be vulnerable in specific ways.
Even activists, right?
Yeah,
Like the way that activism can be rooted in vulnerability.
totally.
Like just because a population is vulnerable does not mean that it is not strong
Yeah,
and it cannot organize
yeah,
towards change. So I was also thinking when you said that vulnerability can be a political tool, I was thinking about how Voldemort is like just shies away completely from using any form of vulnerability as a tool, right?
yeah,
Like himself. Like he tries to exploit other people's vulnerabilities, but that is not using it as a tool, right? Like it's not impact, like it's not like he is, wielding his vulnerability as a tool.
yeah,
He is using that to exploit people. He wields like his entire whole thing is like, I am indestructible, I am invincible type thing. Like that's who he wants to be and that's who he wants to project. So
yeah,
perhaps his lack of vulnerability, because Dumbledore, you can say whatever we want about him. Like a lot of people don't like Dumbledore, but he was extremely vulnerable as a leader.
yes,
That doesn't mean we knew everything about him, but that like vulnerability doesn't mean complete transparency and like vomit of sentimentality.
yeah,
It means like it means kind of like putting your your best foot forward sometimes, but also like acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, and that's really fucking hard to
hmm,
acknowledge when you're in a position of power.
yeah. Well said.
So that I just thought like that was really interesting that our conversation took us there. But
Yeah,
that being said, can you tell me about your quote?
my quote was near the end of the chapter. It goes, "But they were not living," thought Harry. "They were gone." The empty words could not disguise the fact that his parents' moldering remains lay beneath the snow and stone, indifferent, unknowing. And tears came before he could stop them, boiling hot, then instantly freezing on his face. And what was the point of wiping them off or pretending? He let them fall, his lips pressed hard together, looking down at the thick snow hiding from his eyes, the place where the last of Lily and James lay, bones now, surely, or dust, not knowing or caring that their living son stood so near, his heart still beating, alive because of their sacrifice, and close to wishing at this moment that he was sleeping under the snow with them.
That is
It,
that's a hard
yeah, that
one.
definitely
That's a
made me
heavy
tear up
one.
reading it. Even just rereading it this time. Because like I feel like this is the very first time we see Harry so sad to the point, like so sad about his parents' deaths to the point that he even for a second thinks that like he wishes that he was dead with them. Like this is like he wished that he hadn't survived. Like he wished that he was with them. Like it's very very tough to read because it's not something we've seen from him previously, and it just
Yeah.
really shows the full range of the deep sorrow that he is feeling at this moment.
And like the helplessness of it all.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very tough.
Oh, that is tough. Oof. I don't want to follow that up. Like, that is so like, the grief in there, and like the vulnerability in there, and like it's so much. Well, I don't want to follow it up, but I will.
No,
Because if not, we're
you
gonna have to end
should.
this
I'm sure yours
podcast right
is
now.
just as good of a quote.
All right. So this one is when they're kind of walking past the war memorial, and it says, "She was pointing at the war memorial. As they had passed it, it had transformed. Instead of an obelisk covered in names, there was a statue of three people: a man with untidy hair and glasses, a woman with long hair and kind, pretty face, and a baby boy sitting in his mother's arms. Snow lay upon all their heads like fluffy white caps."
Yeah, that's just not that part
So,
is actually something I had forgotten.
mm,
When rereading this, I was like, oh,
yes,
like because
me
obviously
too.
they didn't do this in the movie, and it's such a small detail, um, but they just go over it so quickly. But I was like, whoa, like they have a statue made out of them. Like, how did I forget that? Like they have a statue.
Yeah, yeah, same here. So I thought that this was interesting in the politics of mourning because it serves a double purpose. Um, One, for the Muggles, this is a war memorial with like the names engraved of like
Yeah,
their fallen. So that is definitely a way to keep the politics of mourning,
yeah,
right at hand. But that being also a statue of the Potters, which like symbolically is like the last stand against Voldemort, like,
yeah,
that first time anyway. And to memorialize like them, and like the sacrifice that Lily and James made for Harry, like, like this family of
yeah.
three is also a war memorial for
In a way,
the
yeah,
wizarding world. And yeah, so spurring the politics of mourning as well, like, kind of like a
yeah.
never forget type of thing. So it made me think about like how we think about like war heroes or people like casualties in the face of injustice and tyranny, right? Like how we can sometimes justify them to ourselves, which is a hard thing to say out loud. Like, oh no, that had to happen, so this change would happen. And it's like, no, that didn't have to happen. That's the whole point, right? Of the politics of mourning. But like sometimes we detach ourselves so much from the casualties of racism, tyranny, like oppression, that we stop seeing them as like
Right.
people, right? As people who lived and who loved and who aren't just symbols of something larger than themselves. It's okay to see them as people
Yeah,
because they were
yeah.
people to someone, right? So that's sometimes a really hard line for me to kind of try to thread into like, yes, we need change, but this didn't have to happen for us to need change. Why didn't we wake up sooner? And like
It
that's
kind of
like being complicit, right? And that's a
Yeah,
hard thing to
and
think
like
about.
just you saying that kind of makes me, or at least brings up the thoughts of like all the school shootings we've had, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
every time
Mm-hmm.
that happens, the grief and mourning that we feel as like an effect of these children dying in a school shooting is like used as a political tool for change, which as someone who very much wants gun reform in this country, I like agree that like we need to, like these things are horrific, and pointing them out when they happen, like, hey, here's yet another example um of like the violence and
Mm-hmm.
awful things that come from, not pushing gun reform sooner. um but then also at the same time, like these actual human people and children that die become like this symbol, and like we shouldn't have to keep losing children at the hands of guns to make change.
Yeah.
It should be something that we figure out on without.
Yeah, and why do we I'm not saying that this is the wrong move, right, politically or socially, right? But why do we have to keep reminding people that that like these casualties happened for it to be a movement
Yeah,
towards gun reform? Like, you know what
yeah,
I'm saying? Like, why can't it be enough that it's a fucking bad idea to give AR-15s to like the mass public, right? Like, why can't that be enough?
yeah,
And I am not saying that we shouldn't talk about the victims, that we shouldn't talk about the deceased. I think that we should definitely like talk about them, but like, why? It's so frustrating that sometimes we have to like keep talking about the fallen for us to make any visible
yeah,
tangible change, when the problem is that we have given weapons to people who shouldn't have them. Why would we need
yeah,
weapons like
yeah.
this?
Basically, I think that it fits very, very closely to like the general sentiment of what you were saying earlier. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's just frustrating to like, and then people are like, no, it's the mental health crisis. No, it's this. And it's like,
yeah,
maybe it's all of the things. And maybe we should start like, eating the elephant one bite at a time and start making progress, not trying to like say, no, it's this, no, it's that, and then not
I
moving
don't
in
want to eat
any
an elephant.
direction towards it. Because that's okay. Like, let's think about the elephant as made
Yeah,
out of
well, how about like
chocolate,
eating the pizza
and
one
then maybe,
slice
yeah.
at a time?
Okay, I love that.
I just don't want to think about eating an elephant.
Eating, okay, okay, eating the like, what is it, like the 60-inch pizza, like, like those pizzas that are
Yeah,
like as big as
yeah,
the table, that you're like, yeah, eating the biggest pizza you could ever imagine, like one
yeah. Just
square
like
inch at a time.
one slice, until it becomes a personal pizza and we finish the whole pizza in one sitting.
Personal pizzas. I almost had one today and I didn't because it took too long for the like oven to reheat anyway. And I was like, oh, I don't have time for this. So I made tater tots
That
instead
was a great
because I'm
story,
trash.
Adri. I appreciate you sharing that with the class.
You're welcome. Fully believing that you're
No,
not being
could never.
sarcastic. Anyway, who was the character that you thought showed the politics of stir and vulnerability for
Uh,
you?
I think, I mean, it's honestly kind of an even split between Harry and Hermione, to be honest, in this chapter. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Harry just because he had, while we did see an outpouring of emotion, and sorrow and vulnerability from Hermione earlier on, when, that I think at some point it mentions that like she was sobbing when they got to the new place after they left like the last one that Ron was there with them at. Um, but like Harry doesn't go over and comfort her, and um, because he wants to give her space. I just feel like the ending where we see Harry, because we're in his perspective, right? Um, so we see his sorrow from like a very deep first hand experience, but we also see alongside that the vulnerability that he shows to Hermione at the same time. So I'll go with him. What about you
Okay.
for mourning?
I mean, obviously, Harry, because he's going to see his parents' final resting place, and your quote like was so indicative of like the grief and mourning that he's
Yeah.
going through, and even it's like a super like dark moment in his journey, in terms of like they don't know what else to do, like
Yeah.
what the next step is. And it's also a super dark moment in his internal journey in coming to terms with like that external journey, right? Like, because he's at the point where, well, Dumbledore didn't give me more information, and also Dumbledore didn't tell me that his family was also buried here. What else didn't he tell me? We could have bonded,
Yeah.
like all of these things, right? So, and then
Yeah.
Ron had left it. So it's like warning on like a couple
Yeah. The whole
different
run of it
levels
all.
here.
Yeah. Definitely.
So when we think about like the series, right? I'm thinking about your politic of the politics of sorrow and vulnerability. I feel like it weaves a really deep thread throughout, the series and like the background, because obviously we have like, for example, Neville. His parents are casualties of the war because I mean they're not all here, in their minds, and like Neville has to carry that sorrow with him the
Exactly.
entire series. I mean, Harry obviously has to carry his sorrow. I mean, not only did he lose his parents, he also has to like live with the Dursleys. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
punishment enough. Um and I think about also like in the background, like I know we don't get a lot of background on a lot of the characters at Hogwarts, but like there's a lot of family trees that are not what they used to be. So there's a lot of aunts and uncles that should have been there who are not there. There's a lot of parents, like Neville's, who should be there that are not there. And we are looking at a generation
Yeah.
in recovery, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what made
Yeah.
me think of
I'd
that.
say that's pretty accurate. In terms of your politic mourning, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is Order of the Phoenix, the fifth book, because I feel like it was a main
Mm-hmm.
theme throughout that entire book because from start to finish, Harry's in some stage of grief and mourning, from losing Cedric at the end of Goblet of Fire and dealing with the grief and the mourning that comes with that loss, that first big loss in his life, and then ending with the loss of Sirius, who was his closest father figure, someone who he loved dearly, and just seeing how he copes with that grief and mourning at the end of that book. So, and then of course we see it again when he loses Dumbledore in the next book. Um, we had that whole chapter on mourning at the end of Half Blood Prince, when it was Dumbledore's funeral, talking about how all the different
Mm-hmm.
characters were mourning in their own way, how they were grieving in their own ways, including Fox the Phoenix. And so yeah, I mean, obviously this entire series, I don't think it's a mystery that it's really like an entire look, like deep look on loss. The author has said before that
Mm-hmm.
the series was very much inspired by the loss of her mother at a young age. The Dementors were, her physical manifestation for her depression that happened following the loss of her mother. And so, I mean, it's just a very deep study of grief and mourning and loss. So, yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to say, like, in terms of vulnerability, last thought on the series and vulnerability as a whole. Like, if you think about like the bad guys, like the people we fucking hate, they are the ones who try not to show their
Yeah.
vulnerability, right? So,
Snape.
like, I mean, I don't care if you say like Snape has a redemption arc or whatever. Still don't like him. He's one of the ones who's like, I
He
am not vulnerable. Like I am so
he only
strong. Like
shows
da da da.
vulnerability to Dumbledore. That's literally the only person, and
Yeah,
that's not helpful to Harry. So, uh,
exactly. Or to anyone else for that matter. Like someone like Umbridge, definitely not showing vulnerability. Someone like we said, Voldemort, not showing vulnerability. Like,
Yeah.
so think about like
Voldemort
all those
is
people
like,
we love to hate or
yeah,
actually hate
Voldemort
to
is
hate.
actually like actively trying to convince everyone that he is not vulnerable. He's trying to make himself, his goal in that whole series
Correct.
is to make himself invulnerable by making these Horcruxes. Um, so
Yeah. And one of those people who is like, even though I don't think he's a bad guy, right? But like sometimes he's like someone the fans may like side eye a lot is like Sirius, who's like the closest that comes to being like a good guy who doesn't want to really show his
yeah,
vulnerability.
yeah,
Like quote unquote good, because no one's really good or bad, really. Except for Voldemort
yes,
and Umbridge.
they are really
Pieces of
bad.
shit.
So,
Uh, but yeah, so speaking of Umbridge and bad things, let's get to our Dementors in our Dementor and Chocolate section, where we talk about what we didn't like in the chapter and then what we liked in the chapter. So, Helene, you may go first.
if I am being honest, I actually had a hard time thinking of a Dementor this chapter, which was a nice change of pace because I feel like I have not enjoyed the last few chapters. But this chapter was,
Mm-hmm.
all I could think of just many, many positives. And in term, obviously, it was a sad chapter, but like in terms of like how the chapter was constructed and written and stuff, I liked it. But was able to remember one thing that I remembered while I was reading it that was like, oh fuck you, and that was learning that Snape was deploying some of the same like rules and tactics that Umbridge came up with during her reign of terror, in the fifth book, such as like some of those decrees that she had made when she was High Inquisitor. And they specifically call out in the chapter the like limiting the meeting in large groups, and the having unofficial like group activities. Basically, he was deploying these same tactics in order to try to um, curtail the reignition of Dumbledore's army, uh, under his reign as headmaster of Hogwarts.
Under his regime.
So, fuck you, Snape.
Okay, fair, fair. Mine was that Harry felt like Dumbledore didn't care enough about him to share that his family was also buried in Godric's Hollow, and that no one, like, even more so than that, the idea that no one had even thought to bring this young boy, even though he's like now, like, becoming a man, to the final resting place that his parents are in.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about
Come
that
on.
before.
Like, up to this point, this boy has not
I'm
seen
surprised that
where
that
his
Hagrid
parents
never like
are.
offered to do that, or Sirius. Well, I mean, he didn't get a lot of time with Sirius, and the time he did get was very like regulated. But like Hagrid, I could have seen him taking him to the gravesite.
Or Dumbledore. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, I feel like,
I don't expect a lot
yeah,
from
I
Dumbledore.
know, I know, I know. But like, he's a very busy man.
He
Okay,
is.
fine. But like you said, Hagrid, McGonagall, like
Yeah,
anyone could have definitely stepped in and be like, Lupin, even Tonks, like we've got a
Mrs.
list of
Weasley,
people.
Mr. and Mrs.
Mrs.
Weasley.
Weasley,
Yeah,
for sure. Like, come on.
yeah,
Like, no one had thought in 7 years they have known this boy.
yeah. Poor
You know
boy.
what? Let's have some, like, a little bit of
And
closure or something. Once a
like,
year, visit their graves.
yes. Also, I know that like Petunia and Vernon are awful, awful people, but like, I wonder if he ever asked if he could go visit his parents' gravesite when he was a kid. Like, I wonder if
Yeah, I
Petunia
wonder,
ever visited, because Petunia, that's her sister, right? So, like, I wonder if
does
they ever
Petunia
even.
even know about the gravesite? Like,
I mean,
that's another question I
I would
have.
assume she knew where they lived, and I assume she would, like, know that they were buried.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like,
You put two and two
this left me with
together.
so
Yeah.
many questions. You know what I mean? Like, this left me
Yeah.
with so many questions as to, like, Why
Yeah.
had someone in the wizarding world at least never thought of like, you know what, let's do like, I don't know, maybe it's just that I grew up going to my grandparents' graves every year at least, or like
Yeah,
every Mother's Day and on their
yeah,
birthday, and like on
it's
maybe like
honestly, yeah, it's a very important part to the grieving process, I think. I personally, thankfully, have not really lost someone so, like that as close to me to the point where I like feel the need to go visit their grave. Um, Thankfully, I mean, but I can imagine that it would be extremely cathartic and like therapeutic to be able to like take all that grief that I'm feeling and like see it manifested in a physical form.
there's I mean, obviously everyone has like their different um customs, right? But
Yeah.
like I know that in Spain there's like customs where like you go and like clean the, the above ground graves, like,
Yeah.
um at least
Yes, in
once a
Judaism
week.
you leave a stone on that. Oh, at least once a week. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
In
but
Judaism,
that's
you leave a
yeah.
stone on the grave whenever you visit the grave site. You leave a pebble or a stone on the grave.
Yeah, like
That's their
in
custom.
like Puerto Rico, my mom would go at least once a year to clean the graves, because like, so in a tropical island, it's not like, because of the flooding and everything, there's like they're above ground graves, and like, they're like made out of concrete or stone. So
Okay.
like my mom would, go, we would go and we would clean it and like spray it down, like we would take like bleach and stuff and like scrub it down and clean it, and then
Wow,
like
like intense.
intense like leaf, fresh flowers, because you want it to not look like no one's visited, or not taken
No,
care
yeah, yeah, it makes
of
sense.
it. And sometimes it would be more than once a year. So, and at least for their birthdays or their anniversary of their passing and all that, just like leave like flowers, leave, sit down and pray, or talk to them, or just like a quiet moment of reflection. And then we would, go about our day. But like it was, I grew up doing that at least twice a year. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
to have that, and that was from my grandparents. I, like thankfully my parents are still both alive. So to be an orphan who can't even do that
Yeah.
hadn't really even occurred to me, which is like on me too, right? But like I'm just like shit, and like had no one ever even thought to like take this boy to that?
Yeah, it's definitely not something I'd thought of until you brought it up, but there's a lot of merit to that, for sure.
All right. So how about your chocolate?
Sorry, I'm actually
Are
eating
you
a piece
eating
of chocolate
chocolate
right
right now?
now,
Oh my god, I love you so much.
but to chocolate my chocolate. My chocolate for the chapter. My chocolate this chapter was the way that Hermione comforted Harry at the end specifically, and just, I mean, part of my politic, the vulnerability, right? So the complete trust and vulnerability that they have with each other was just honestly very moving. And I just loved being able to see their friendship at like such a deep level
Mm-hmm.
portrayed in this chapter. And as far as like a specific moment, the the moment at the very end when Harry's, he's crying in front of his parents' grave with her, and he starts to think about how he's like regretting the fact that he didn't bring something to leave at the grave. He's like, "Oh, I should have brought like flowers or something to leave at the grave." And he doesn't even have to say anything out loud. Hermione is able to anticipate what he's thinking and what he needs in that moment, and it just creates a wreath out of thin air for him. And it was
Mm-hmm.
exactly what he needed at that moment. And I just love that because it illustrates just how much they know each other, how much they trust each other, and how how like deep their friendship goes, and I really love it.
Well, that chocolate of yours is basically like what I feel like harmony shippers are like. See, this is why they should be together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that their friendship in this chapter is very beautiful. I don't think that it has to be
Romantic.
romantic. However, if the author had decided to go that way, I would have bought it. That's fine. But
Yeah,
they
that's
didn't.
fine.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I could see
I
it either
mean,
way.
you don't have to be romantic with all your friends, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that it's I mean, I have deep, meaningful, complete, vulnerable, like loving friendships where I love the person extremely, like so much, but I don't have romantic feelings for them. And I have those types of relationships with people of the opposite gender or the people of the gender in which I am attracted to sexually. And yet I still don't like it doesn't always have to be
Oh yeah,
romantic. So
it's not always, yeah, that doesn't always have to be romantic, which is like the whole like thing with like biphobia, where it's like, oh no, they're attracted to like like two genders, like that is too much. It's like, well, just
yeah.
because you're attracted to two genders doesn't make it that you're like attracted to everyone.
Yeah.
Guys, come
And
on.
and like I said, if harmony did end up being a thing, I would not have been mad about it. Like I think this right here showed like you need this foundation to have like a really healthy romantic relationship too. So like
Yeah.
yeah, if they had decided to explore things romantically, I would have been like, great. Yeah, they really love and trust each other. Like good for them. But yeah, so I mean,
Okay,
that's all I
so
got to
I'm
say on
gonna
that.
go with my chocolate is actually a romantic one. Um,
Oh,
it
an
is
actual romantic one.
an actual, like, canonically romantic one. It's Harry opening the Marauders map and focusing on Ginny's name. Like, I don't know why that really touched me, except that it did. I was like that place of comfort of like knowing where the person you love is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like yeah, it's kind of what I similar to what I was saying in terms of like being able to have a physical manifestation of like a thing that you're feeling. Like being able
Oh
to
yeah,
like have something to anchor yourself to. And for him it was like as long as I can see that she's okay, I will be okay.
yeah, agreed. So it's like when I do find a phone to see where Seth is and if he's on his way home.
Find a phone, the Marauders map of the Muggle age. I don't know.
Listen, technology has caught up to us, to the wizarding world. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, yeah.
here. The moment is now, Helene.
Yes, exactly.
So, last episode we asked a question, and that question was, whose side were you on this chapter when Ron decides to leave, Harry or Ron's, and why? And Helene, before we started recording, you said we didn't get any answers to this question, and all I want to know is, guys, you don't want to be controversial, is that it?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, we consistently get, at least a few answers per week to every question. So is it the question? Did you guys not like the question? Was it like, oh, come on, Helene, it's obvious we're on Harry's side? Or did you not want to fight with me? Because both, I think, probably are valid.
I feel like, Helene, that people are like either agnostic, they're like, I'm not on either Harry or Ron's side. But
Yeah,
in this matter,
there's
it just,
Switzerland.
yeah, they're like, fuck it. Like, I don't know, we're team like Hermione on this, basically.
Right.
Or, or it's like, you are such a presence
I
that they're
changed everybody's
like,
mind.
no, you're such a presence that they're like, I can't get into an online fight with Helene. She will find me
Or
and curse me.
yes, I guess that's a possibility. But what I think is more plausible is that everyone listened to that last episode, and even if they were on Ron's side at the beginning, I changed everybody's mind, and they're all on my side now.
Okay, so you're just going off of vibes here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's valid.
Okay, anyway, vibes aside, we've got a new question for you guys anyway, so let's get into it.
This one is much less controversial, so I really do hope you guys actually take the time to answer it.
I mean, I all I want for listeners is to be vulnerable with us because I'm just
Same.
here. I'm just
Vulnerability garners
here.
trust.
I am just a person speaking into a microphone in the internet, hoping that someone just types back.
Exactly. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I was trying to do a rom-com thing about it. Anyway,
Yeah.
this episode's question is the following: If you've lost someone important to you, how did that grief affect you?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about in many different chapters throughout different books, we've talked about how grief and mourning affects different people in different ways, and how everybody has their own processes for dealing with that grief. And so I want to hear, any experiences that you guys feel comfortable sharing of how any grief that you've experienced and how that affected you and how you got through it and or how you're still dealing with it today. I would love to hear that.
Well, speaking of grief, I do have something to bring up, which is going to probably like buoy us in towards the media we've been consuming because it's like a nice bridge. But did you listen to the 3 a.m. version of Taylor Swift's Midnights?
Of course I did.
Okay, so I'm sure you've read all about this, but there's a song that is to me very clearly about a pregnancy loss. So trigger warning for pregnancy loss. Um, and I have not gone through this myself, right? Like I did not lose a pregnancy that I actively wanted. But I tear up and like sob or sob every time I hear Bigger Than the Whole Sky,
Bigger
which
than the
is
whole
the
sky.
song.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I was like, I know what song you're talking about. Um, but in terms of the name of the song, all I could think of was "Would Have, Could Have, Should Have," and I'm like, that's not the right song. Although I think those words are said
Yes,
in
I
the
think
song.
they're said, but they're not. That's not. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's another song called "Would Have, Could Have, Should Have" that people think is written about John Mayer. Completely different thing.
Yeah.
But yes, I know
Yes.
what you're talking about. It is, yeah, yeah. It's a good song.
It
It's very touching.
is a song about grief and its effects, and it is. I'm talking about it and tearing up. I am not even actively listening to this song.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've had reactions like
um.
that to other things. So
So people are saying people who have lost wanted pregnancies have said that it really like affected them and like emotionally. They had very visceral emotional reactions to it, but it also helped them feel less alone, which is like the thing about vulnerability, right? Like I promise I was making a whole big point about this, like bringing it back to grief and vulnerability is like
yeah,
sometimes being vulnerable and showing your grief with others, even though it creates like this emotional response in other people, helps other people feel less alone, and that way we can
exactly.
kind of move forwards in life
Definitely.
instead
I
of
was
being
gonna say
stuck in
that.
that
Yeah,
grief.
sharing your unique experiences actually makes people feel less alone rather than alienates you or other people further.
Well,
Even though it's an experience that's extremely unique to you.
Taylor has said that this album is autobiographical again, like, Evermore and Folklore were not. So, she's basically coming back to the autobiographical of it all. So even if it is not her own personal pregnancy loss, because I don't know anything about her medical history, nor do I want to assume, she captured the feeling of grief very well in that song. Taylor Swift having been said and having been
Yes,
the media
yes.
I consumed last week, let's talk about the media we've been consuming. Helene, what have you been consuming to stave off the uglies in the world? I don't know how to call
Yes.
them.
This happens like very rarely, but I think I might have found a new favorite show. Like not like all-time favorite, but like it's gonna be up there for me, I think.
Oh my god, I'm so
Um,
excited. Tell me about it.
uh, it is called Lucifer, which I'm sure you might have
Oh,
heard of it.
I,
It
I have
has
watched all of it.
you've seen it. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, I knew for a while that I wanted to start it. Eventually it's been on my list on Netflix forever. And, um, I have so many things that I'm just like, okay, I'm not in the mood to start it right now. I'll start it later. Like, I know I'm going to watch it. I'll watch it eventually. I'll get to it when I get to it. However, last weekend, my father, like the weekend before Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
my mother and my father were in town visiting. My parents were in town visiting me. And it was a night where my mother had gone to bed and my dad and I were trying to find something to watch together. And uh we were scrolling on Netflix and I came across Lucifer and I was like, "Oh, I've been meaning to start this show. Have you seen it?" And he's like, "I think I might have seen the first episode, but I mean, I'd be willing to watch it again." And so I was like, "Great." We watched the first episode. Immediately, I was like, "That was delightful.
Mm-hmm.
Please, sir, give me more." And so since then, I have my dad and I have not been watching it together, but it's something that we can both agree on in the moment. Ever since, and he enjoyed it too, but ever since then, like he's left, obviously, and I've been continuing to watch it. I think I'm in season 2 now. For those who have not seen it, it is a show on Netflix where the main character is the devil, Lucifer Morningstar. He has decided that he does not want to rule hell anymore. And so he just decides to move to LA with his faithful demon Mazikeen as like his helper. And he owns a nightclub called Lux in Los Angeles. And he meets a detective, Chloe Decker, who seems to be the only person that is invulnerable to all of his powers that he has over all
Mm-hmm.
the citizens of Earth. And so he is very intrigued as to why this is the only person who he does not have power over. And she realizes that he is an asset in helping solve murders, and he likes to punish people and find and seek justice. And so he and Chloe work together, and he works as a consultant to help her solve murders, basically. So it's kind of like a crime procedural. It's basically like a police procedural show, but with a supernatural touch. It's hilarious. I love Lucifer. um it's so delightful and it's intriguing, and I just love the lore that it's creating. The characters
Mm-hmm.
are it doesn't take itself seriously, which I love. I love a show that can like be campy but also like actually very good, and not just be like bad campy. And it's just like honestly, I don't know a better way to describe it other than delightful. It's delightful.
I love Lucifer, the show, not Lucifer the devil. Let's be clear.
I mean, I love the
As
character. I love the
yeah,
character
yeah,
Lucifer the devil.
yeah, yes. Like the character created by Neil Gaiman, fantastic. The one created by the Catholic Church to like make
Yeah,
me
yeah.
not want to go to hell, not as delightful.
I mean, this character is based off of that, so you know.
Oh, there are some very large departures there, Missy. Anyway,
As a Jew who
I
doesn't believe in hell, it doesn't bother
yeah,
me very much.
of course. But there's a distinction for obviously. So I love the world building that Neil Gaiman does in all his stuff. Always like I've been a fan of his for a very long time. He does novels, comic books, now TV shows with Lucifer, and like um
Good
what's the one?
Omens, right?
I'm
Is
sorry?
it Good Omens? Good Omens.
Yeah, Good
Isn't that
Omens
Neil
is
Gaiman?
also, yeah, it's also one of his. That was actually a novel. And I think it might have been also a comic. I'm not sure. But Lucifer, I don't think was a novel. I think that was like basically he just went straight to TV on that one.
I mean, it
With a
was a novel.
development
You
deal.
want to know what the it was a novel. You want to know what the novel was called?
The
The
Bible, are
Bible.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you.
It's based off a
I
very popular novel called The Bible.
Oh, I can't with you. Also, The Sandman is on Netflix. That's also by him. It's pretty good.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't
so
watched it.
yeah, so that's only on its first season. You have time to catch up.
Yeah.
Um, I really, really love his world building. I hope we see more from him. He like tries to kind of turn the lore into something different. Usually, like, oh, you thought that this person was like bad. Well, actually, they're just misunderstood, kind of thing, which is like totally my
Exactly
jam.
what happens with Lucifer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, but that's actually what happens in all his books. So you can
Cool.
never really take it at face value of like who's good or who's evil. You know what I'm saying? So like usually like an archangel
Mhm.
is going to be the good guy in like whatever Bible story, right? But like
Yeah.
maybe not so much in a Neil Gaiman book. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
angels
Also,
and
I
demons don't
love,
mean the same in his realm.
yeah. I have to say also, I love DB Woodside who plays Amenadiel, because he is also Robin Wood from season 7 of Buffy. So it's very nice to see him in another role, and I love that, what he does for that character. It's just very, I absolutely love it. But I think there's no one I love more than Lucifer. He is
You
just
know,
such a beautifully like complex character. I love it.
and he's cast so well. So you know what I love about
Hmm.
casting sometimes is that I don't know if we've had this conversation before, Helene, but like, you know how we like procedurals and sometimes you'll see the same person being cast as like a cop or like a
Yeah.
consultant for the FBI or like this like same like person being cast across like franchises. And I just always think about that like could you imagine being that person who's always being cast like oh he was cast on Law and Order and then he was cast on like CSI and then on FBI and then on Criminal Minds and it's always like the same like oh you want a cop we'll cast this person. It's like how like that's a hard typecast like with I
Yeah.
understand like we love procedurals, you know, but also the idea of like oh you just look like a cop, you know, like that sometimes like
Yeah.
no offense to cops out there, you're doing a good job. Hopefully, you're one of the good ones, but like that has to hit hard
Yeah.
as an
I will
actor.
say I will say that the character of Lucifer and like the dynamic between Lucifer and Detective Decker really gives me strong castle vibes, which
I
I know
was
I
just
talked
gonna say
about.
Castle. Yes.
Yeah, because I know I talked about my journey of watching Castle on this podcast when I saw that for the first time last year or earlier this year. I don't know, time is weird. Um, but yes, it's like Castle and Lucifer are very similar in terms of like how they are characterized, and then like the relationship between Castle and oh god, I'm forgetting her name at the moment.
Kate.
Um, Kate, yes. And then Lucifer and Chloe are like it's very reminiscent. I can see it being like a very like slow burn type thing
Oh yeah,
that is.
yeah. You will love this. Trust.
Although the burn is much faster in Lucifer so far as far as I can tell. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think they're doing it badly. It's just different.
Well, I think that showrunners have gotten wise to this, and it's the fall. This truth, and it's the following. our attention spans are not what it used to be, and we are not willing to sit through 7 seasons of a fucking TV show before we see the characters get it on.
Yeah.
If
like I'd much
that's the
rather.
intention.
Yeah. For me, it's like I like the slow burn. Like I like aspects of it, and like I understand why some people decide to do that in storytelling. But also, like I would kind of usually prefer to show the relationship and like show the like ups and downs of it. Like they don't have to be together the entire run of the show, right? And like it's kind of like,
you know who did this right?
Who?
New Girl.
I was gonna say it's kind of like Dawson's Creek in the way that, like, you know, they held off because they thought that Joey and Dawson were gonna be, you know, the ones that end up together, and they kind of just like let the show progress, like as time went by, instead of like having this one plan of like, oh, we're just gonna have a slow burn the whole time, and then at the end, Joey and Dawson are gonna get together. And because they did that, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Dawson's Creek, Joey ends up.
It's been 20 years
with Pacey. Yeah. Joey ends up with Pacey, which I don't think was the original direction of the show, but because they let those relationships like have the like go through those explorations instead of like trying like to have this slow burn and to have this like plan the whole time, I think that it ended up in like a very, what's the word? Not unique, but like just real. Another word for real. Like
realistic?
No, it's fine. Whatever. In a very, very like true way. That's not the word I was thinking of, but it's the closest I can think of right now.
Organic, maybe.
It doesn't. Yeah. No, I mean, authentic.
Whatever.
That's the word. Authentic.
There you go. Yay! We got there.
Sorry, guys. It took me a while to get there.
No, yeah. Hot take. I actually like that they ended up together on Dawson's Creek.
Joey and Pacey?
Yeah.
Joey and Pacey? Yeah. I mean, I honestly, because I know the like basics of storytelling, like I honestly did think that the writers were going to make Joey and Dawson end up together no matter what, just because I was like, it's clear that this was their plan the whole time. So I like that they did something unexpected.
Well, they did in a way because then like Dawson became like a showrunner and like had them together on their show. You know what I mean? Like it was very meta. Whatever. Anyway, that's not the point. But the point of the slow burn that I thought did well by like, you know, exploring those relationships but not being together all the time and all that, like I said, was New Girl. Like have you watched New Girl, or am I spoiling this for you?
I've seen like the first few seasons. It wasn't exactly my favorite thing.
Oh, it's not your jam. I gotcha.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but it was, yeah, I just wasn't feeling it.
Well, I mean, it's been years since this show has ended.
I know,
so I'm sorry
I know that like
I'm spoiling it.
I know the whole Jess and Nick thing. But so go ahead.
Well, Jess and Nick and Cece and Schmidt of it all, where it's like they were both like together, apart, together, you know, like, but they end up, you know, together.
Yeah.
I thought they did it pretty well and realistically, you know, and like they went through the moments of like it's awkward because they're in the same friend group and they've broken up and like all of this and how do they find their way back to each other? That builds a lot more tension than will they or won't they, you know?
I agree very much so. Yeah. I was gonna say, will they or won't they only really like make sense for a little bit, and then after a while it gets old.
Exactly.
Like they will. You just got like, I'm sick of waiting because I know they will. It's not a question anymore.
Yeah, and sometimes people watch shows for the relationship and not for like the procedural of it all. Like, let's say it was like, I don't know, Grey's Anatomy, where it's like still like a medical procedural, and you're like, just get it on. Like, I don't care about like this weird fungus that is a virus. Like,
yeah, I mean that's kind of me with Lucifer. Like the dated, like the like episodic mysteries. I'm like, yeah, fine, like whatever, that's fine. But I'm there not only just the relationship between Lucifer and Chloe, but I am there for like the relationships between all the characters and like their
Yeah, and the
personal
world
storylines.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't really care about
So,
the murder that happened that week from a random person that I don't know about.
well, speaking of Grey's Anatomy, I have caught up. So I'm caught up on Grey's Anatomy, season
Nice,
19.
nice. Me too. Love
And
it.
I am very much enjoying it, like you said I would.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also caught up on Love is Blind season 3. I did that this
Hell
weekend.
yes. Yes. It's so good.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, and I don't want to
Yep.
spoil it for anyone, but like my thoughts are mainly this is spoilery thoughts. I don't know who I even like at this point,
Yeah, that's the season that does that.
and to be honest, I feel like there's a lot of self delusion going into this group, and it's giving me like insecure Adri from the early aughts. Not sure I like it. Like, I
Yeah,
just want someone to love me.
it's a unique season of that show for sure in a lot of ways. I'm very interested to see what transpires at the weddings, who even actually ends up making it to the altar.
Yeah, and who ends up like making it to their reunion together?
Yeah.
Even then.
Yeah, I have some predictions. But honestly, like this season is so unpredictable. Like I have a prediction one episode, and the next episode it's like completely different. So I never know.
I'm barely rooting for anyone this season, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think I'm rooting for Alexa and Brennan.
Oh yeah, no. Those are like the for me the Alexa and Brennan are like what are the season 1 couple that got engaged
Lauren,
first too?
it's
Lauren
Lauren
and
and Cameron or
yes, Cam.
I can't remember exactly. It was a CA. It was some sort of C
Okay,
name.
those two.
Yeah,
They're giving me a little bit of that vibe of like yes, I can root for you, you know?
it was Lauren and
Um
Cameron. Yeah, Cameron was his name.
yeah.
I just looked it up.
So those two like Alexa and Brennan, sure, it's not perfect, but no one is. But I know I kept telling I kept texting you. I was like, I will fucking end him if he's not like this is the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen because she fucking is like.
Yeah. See, Love is Blind is the one show that I would go on if I were to go on a dating show. But it's also the one show where it's like they have not proven to me that they would ever actually use their concept to allow people who may not, be found conventionally attractive, like to give them an advantage on the dating game of this age. Because they barely like Alexa's like the very first like plus size woman that they've had in all 3 seasons.
Oh yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like,
and she's fucking like so hot, like she's so gorgeous. And you're like,
yeah,
can a mere mortal survive here? Like,
yeah. Because I feel like that's
and
like
like they
the one thing that holds me back from going on dating shows is like, oh, I'm not hot enough. But like with Love Is Blind, it's like that's the whole point.
Well, but I mean, that's the supposed concept. I don't think that's something that
Well,
happens
the whole
like.
point is that like if that's something that you're worried about in dating, that like your looks are going to be a hindrance on like finding the right person, or it's like gonna like be a roadblock for whether it's for you or for someone else. Like
I just feel like
that.
like this show is all about like, you know what my problem is in dating? I am too beautiful. So
I'm
I need
too
someone.
superficial. Like the
Yeah,
people
like
who
I am too beautiful and I'm looking for a companion. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into these pots and make meaningful connections that are not based on how hot I am.
yeah, but everyone else is hot, so they never have to worry about it.
Oh, I mean, spoiler. This is a spoiler alert, but like some people that I'm not going to mention, which is usually all the guys, are like, wah. Like, she's like, huh? But I'm like not attracted to her.
Yeah, yeah. She's not the type of person I would normally date. In other words, I'm racist.
Yeah. Or like, oh, she's not who I had in my mind. Isn't that the whole fucking point? Like, you cannot start like visualizing who it is.
It is indeed the point.
Anyway, and one that you might enjoy, it's still in its first season. It is a show on ABC called So Help Me Todd. No, not ABC, CBS, I think. Yes, CBS. So Help Me Todd, which is another procedural, as we enjoy, Helene, that is with Skylar Austin. And he plays a, like, down on his luck private detective who got his license revoked, who has, like, his mom is a lawyer and hires him as like an like in-house investigator, and it's shenanigans abound, and I love it so much.
I do like Skylar. I think Skylar Aston or Austin, however you say it. I do like him, so that's
I love him.
Definitely a reason for me to look. Does he sing at all in it?
No, but I wouldn't put it past production to have a musical episode, because it has some really great performers.
Yeah, his voice is just so beautiful. So I would love to see him sing.
Yeah, I'm a little sad that like Zoe's Infinite Playlist or whatever is,
I know.
Gone.
I love that show. I'm so sad about it.
Because he was fantastic in it as well.
Yes, he was.
But it has given us this show, so I'm okay with that, I guess.
There we go. I'll have to look into it.
All right. Well, that's it for today's episode. Please join us next week to talk about Chapter 17 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Bathilda's Secret.
Her secret is that she's a snake. I'm a snake. That joke, I feel like, was specifically for Rex, who I know is listening. So you're welcome, Rex. If you've enjoyed this conversation about snakes and other things, please take a second to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you happen to be listening to us, because it helps new listeners find the podcast, which is, what we want.
It makes our hearts go on.
Yes.
Just had to put in a Titanic reference in there somehow. It's been a while.
You're right.
Anyway, until then, politics managed. Support this show by going to patreon.com/Occhiopolitics. Our patrons keep this show going. You can find us online at Occhiopolitics.com, and we are at Occhiopolitics on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email us your thoughts at info@Occhiopolitics.com. Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699, and you might just hear yourself on the podcast. Adriana Wilson is the founder and creative director of the podcast. Helene Karp is the producer and social media manager. Allison Pullman is the audio wizard and editor who makes us sound so good. Cover art and physical rewards are designed by Adriana Wilson. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are expressly their own and not representative of their employers or associates. Occhiopolitics is part of the MuggleNet family of podcasts.